That's close enough.
It is.
Hi, I'm Ed Eastman. I'm the moderator here just to keep the reaction from going out of control. But of course, you don't care about that. You care about the Dean of Dork Tower, the Maestro of Munchkin, Mr. John Kovalic.
Hi. I thought you'd all be in line waiting to get badges still, so I'm a little surprised anybody showed up.
Well, we'll probably still have them trickling in.
That's much the way I do my cartoons.
All right then. Well, any opening remarks?
Yeah, it's been several years since I've been to CONvergence, and I'm extraordinarily happy to be back. I was the guest of honor a few times back in the aughts, and then I think once in the tens. So this does us for the 20s. And at some point in the 30s, I hope to be back. But no, seriously, CONvergence is one of those shows, anytime I'm asked, I will be here. There are like 3 shows around the world. One of them is WarpCon in Ireland. One of them is the Luca show in Italy, and CONvergence is the 3rd one. It's just like family, and it's a lovely, lovely thing. You all should be really proud of this.
Thank you. Okay, well, why don't we start things out? Okay, how did you first learn that you were one of us?
Wow.
What geekified you at first?
Okay. This is a story. That's a great question, because there was one particular moment. I'm gonna say 8 years old. We were living in Cumberland, Maryland. I was born in Manchester, England, as you can tell from the accent. Me and New Order and Morrissey and everything. Moved to the States back to the States when I was 2. And I loved the Banana Splits as a kid. And the Banana Splits were doing a live performance at the Johnstown Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Now, my dad's side of the family came from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So all of the cousins, and because my family moved all over the world so often, the cousins, okay.
A little bit, so it doesn't get quite so much.
So much spittle.
Yes.
The cousins were like my close group of friends growing up. They were the constant. So one of the aunts and uncles bought tickets for the Banana Splits. And at the time, there was a Banana Split cereal. There was like cereal for everything back then. And for some reason, never having been to any concert in my life before, I cut off the front of the Banana Splits cereal box. I divided it into 4 panels so that I could get each of the Banana Splits signatures on it. And I've got no idea why I even thought they'd be giving signatures. But the funny thing was, like halfway through the concert, there was an intermission, and of course it's the Banana Splits, and of course, I know that these aren't real creatures. I know that they are humans in questionable ape and elephant, and actually Snorky was the one you could tell. But the rest of them was like, what's that? Legal? I think that's a dog. But during the intermission, somehow, I got away from my family. And somehow, I got backstage. And I go looking for the Banana Splits. And I've got my little signing cardboard cereal cover. And it was, obviously the Johnstown Memorial Coliseum is not a huge venue. Otherwise it would not be in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. But in my mind, it was like Spinal Tap. I'm walking through these back corridors, and eventually I get to the Banana Splits backstage area, and there are the Banana Splits with their heads off, smoking. They're smoking, and one of them, and I'm gonna say it was Flegel, but it could have been, I don't know which one, turns over, looks at me and says, get out of here, kid. And I got out of there. And again, this was not, I didn't feel, weirded out or anything like this, and I never thought that the banana splits was real. Seeing them, beheaded like this was a little odd. But they did have a signing session after the show, and it was in their dressing room, and you'd have to pass your piece of paper, and you'd get it passed back to you, because obviously they're out of costume. But, the little kids didn't know this. And I remember very clearly, very, very clearly, in very much a Christmas Story kind of way, standing there with my lovely ruled piece of cardboard for each of their signatures. I know the kids just being given these little sheets of paper, not unlike this, just handing them back. I just remember me standing there with my cardboard, looking at all the other kids. And I swear to God, I don't know what I exactly thought, but it was the 8-year-old equivalent of looking around going, amateurs. And so even though I didn't recognize it at the time, that was probably my first true geek out. And there have been many times since.
Okay, so, and then 30 years ago, you started doing something called Dork Tower.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah, that thing. How did that come about?
Okay, well, I had been doing comics pretty much my whole life. My mom was an editor for a publication called My Weekly Reader here in the US, published by Wesleyan University Press. It was kind of like a weekly newspaper for kids. But my mom also wrote a comic strip in the back of this called Hops the Bunny. So I grew up with, even though my mom was not technically a cartoonist, she would draw Hops for the actual artist to draw. So she could put in the dialogue and everything. So I grew up with comics all around the place. And from a very early age, I just started drawing. And most kids draw. Like there's very few kids who hate drawing, and some of them just stop, which is a great shame. But I did a comic strip in high school. I would draw comic strips in the back of my physics notebooks and share them with my friends. And so my school had a bi-weekly newspaper in England, and I got my first comic strip, Wildlife, published in that. And Wildlife was 3 theoretically anthropomorphic animals, but I think you actually have to look like the animal to be truly anthropomorphic. And Carson the muskrat was one of the characters. And so Wildlife came with me from school to the University of London when I studied astrophysics there. Then I transferred to the University of Wisconsin to study economics, mainly because economics does not require n-dimensional tensor calculus like astrophysics did. And then for a while, for a few painful years, Wildlife was actually syndicated nationally. And I was in my 20s then, and I'd never really realized how much work you got to put into a proper daily syndicated comic strip. And my syndicate had never had a comic strip before, so they didn't really know what to do with it. But I've just always been drawing. And I started going to Gen Con again. Like I went as a kid, or went as a teen. And when I was employed by the State Journal as a features writer, that's the morning newspaper in Madison. But this is a very long answer to a very short question. I'm so sorry.
Well, that's what we want. You're the one that we want to talk.
I've been a gamer since growing up in England. Like the first game I remember discovering was Escape from Colditz. which was in high streets in England, which was just a phenomenal game. I mean, it was like in the States at the time, it was like the Happy Days game, or any one of a dozen licensed games you got at Kmart over Christmas. And Escape from Colditz was just this brilliant, brilliant game, which had so much more thought and depth to it, and had this very palpable sense that when you tried to escape from this prisoner of war camp, much in the way Forbidden Island, there's this real sense of sinking. You got to get off the island if you've ever played that. The same real, very direct feeling, which I'd never experienced in a game before, hit. So I've been, you know, and I got into Dungeons and Dragons in 1977 when I was in this little shop in London, in Hammersmith, a tiny place called Games Workshop. It was their first shop, and it was just an amazing general game store at the time. That's where I picked up a little white box of Dungeons and Dragons, and in England, to this day, historical miniature gaming is a huge thing. So I've been painting up Airfix figures, Airfix tanks, playing World War II, 1 to 72nd scale war games, and you could buy rules in England and Britain on the high street, published by major publishers. There's this book called Operation Warboard. Every weekend there seemed to be a gaming show at some village somewhere in Britain, and you just had to take the train to it, and you know, people had the little stands there and everything. So anyway, when I was writing for the State Journal, Gen Con was in Milwaukee at the time, and I just got my editors to send me to Gen Con to cover it as a feature story. And so yeah, I got my newspaper to pay for Gen Con. And I started talking with companies, like very early on. I started talking with the marketing director for Steve Jackson Games was there, some other folks who I recognized were publishing fanzines. So I was getting some like little single panel, very geeky comics publishing fanzines in the early 90s. And then in 96, I was at Gen Con, and one of the editors of Shadis magazine, which was the original publisher of Knights of the Dinner Table, Knights of the Dinner Table was leaving Shadis to do its own self-publication thing with Kinzer and Company. And the editor said, do you think you could come up with a gaming comic strip? I was like, oh goodness, yes. Which tends to be my answer to anything without thinking things through. And I just, as I was walking away, it's like immediately the name Dork Tower came to mind. And it's not because of the Stephen King book, it's not because of the Dork Tower game. It came about because role-playing, I loved RuneQuest, and I loved the ducks in RuneQuest. I probably loved RuneQuest because of the ducks in RuneQuest. And I just thought they did a parody, an old Judges Guild module called Dork Tower. They did a parody of this called Duck Tower for RuneQuest. And so I got Dork Tower from, not from Dork Tower, but from Duck Tower. And one of the things I do is, when I talk to schools, I thought I brought, here we go. When I talk to schools, I always tell them early on, if you're going to design something, use basic shapes. And I've not had a new idea for comic strip since Wildlife, and Wildlife has been a very painful experience. And so I just was going, okay, basic, let's start with something completely new. And basic shapes. So there we got the circle, the square, the triangle. And the circle became Ken. The triangle was matched. And I think we all know who the square is. there's the square. So it's like, oh my goodness, all these things I've been telling kids to do actually work. That's just crazy. So yeah, and it's like within a couple of weeks, I had my first couple of strips drawn, and one of them, and so Shadis was publishing bi-monthly at the time, and so it wasn't like a huge schedule, it wasn't like I had to think of stuff on a daily basis. And so that gave me time to really think about these full panel comics pages, and it was the very second one where Igor wanted to play, so this is, I remember, this is 30 years ago. This was Wild and Outrageous 30 years ago, but Igor wanted to play a female elf. And 30 years ago in gaming, this was just like not done. I mean, really, it's like, it's just how the world has changed is really quite phenomenal. But, you know, Matt and Ken were trying to be very supportive, saying, yeah, Igor, okay, nice, it's good to see you being open-minded and everything like that. And then the final panel is them, Igor, Matt, and Ken, I just remember this, thinking of themselves, pervert, deviant, freak. But like right away, that established Igor's character. It's just being out there pushing these boundaries. And Igor very quickly became the very favorite character of the strip up until Julie was introduced. But yeah, that's how it started. It began in Shadis, and very quickly it took off.
Yeah, actually, I remember those early strips because I was reading Shadis. I almost became a reviewer for them, but then they stopped publishing.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Hydrate, people. Hydrate.
Hail hydrate. Well, then 5 years later.
Yes. Okay. So Munchkin. So I've been a gamer. I had, and my connection with Steve Jackson games is predicated on the O.J. Simpson trial. I was an editorial cartoonist for the State Journal in the late 80s, early 90s, and the O.J. Simpson trial was on early 90s, so was it 91, 92, something like that, possibly 93. So I did, but at one point, one of O.J. Simpson's lawyers said there was a conspiracy to get O.J. And being a Steve Jackson Games fanboy, as soon as I heard the phrase conspiracy, my eyes lit up. And so I knew this cartoon. It's a very widely used cartoon, editorial cartoon trope, which is the circle, with lots of arrows pointing at things, and it comes around in full circle. So I had the conspiracy to get O.J., and I had, you know, a grassy knoll, I had a single bullet, I had something else, and eventually I put the Gnomes of Zurich. No, the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati I put in. And so I drew the Bavarian Illuminati, because I was a Steve Jackson Games fanboy, as this dancing pyramid. And so I'm not sure how many other people in Madison, Wisconsin got that particular reference. But I faxed the cartoon to my friend Dana Blankenship, who was the marketing manager who I'd spoken to at Gen Con. And about 2 weeks later, a week later, I got that fax back from her. I got a phone call from her saying, yes, Steve saw your cartoon, and he loved it. He's got 2 comments. One, there's a typo. And that really sort of defined my relationship with Steve for the next 25 odd years, 30 odd years. And secondly, would you like to do a comic for us? We've got this feature that runs in Pyramid Magazine called Murphy's Rules. And Murphy's Rules was this wonderful single panel, well, actually it was 4 panels, but all of them individual, none related to the other, which were cartoonifying some of the silliest rules in games, rules that just didn't, play out in the real world. And it could be anything, like the fact that in Deadlands, you use poker to resolve almost anything in Deadlands, except poker, which used a different mechanic. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Murphy's Rules. I was on it for maybe 5 or 6 years. But at this one point, Magic the Gathering just happened. And I would get, my whole group was into Magic. My wife actually bought her wedding dress by selling a Beta Black Lotus. You think that's terrible? Actually, that's not terrible, because at the time, we had so little money, it meant more to us then than it would at real value now. That was actually huge. Feel bad for my friend who sold her Beta Black Lotus for $25. Because at the time, that was unheard of sum of money for a single card. But anyway, I found out that Steve Jackson Games were putting out Illuminati, New World Order, a collectible card game. And I got on the phone and I talked with Steve. And I said, yeah, I just wanted to check in to see if you had any card art left. And Steve said, yeah, we're actually running behind. We've got about 20 cards we could use some help on. Can you draw in Watchmen style? And I said, well, of course I can draw in Watchmen style. Sure. Hung up the phone, then went to look up what Watchmen was. It's like, oh, yeah, I can't really draw like that. But I did, and it was an experience. I mean, it was actually a really great education in working as an illustrator in the gaming industry. Most of the cards Steve approved immediately. I was like, oh, that's great. And I'd be using a lot of photo references. I would use, I would be happy when I had to mostly draw buildings. But there's one card that Steve sent back for revisions 6 times. And it was just a boot about to step on a banana skin. And for some reason, my vision of what a boot should look like and what Steve's vision of this boot should be just never totally matched. But it was like a very early lesson in, yeah, don't take it personally. I can do this revision. And so I had about 20 cards in Illuminati. I think I had about 40 cards in the expansion, the Assassins expansion. About a year later, I get a phone call from Steve telling me that they're coming out with a game called Shade Geek. And would I like to illustrate it? And Shade Geek was my first true game illustration job, where it was all in my style at the time. It was just in, 1998 John, what his art looked like. And there'd be like a lot of things which I just do not tune out. I don't understand, because I was a huge fan of this one cartoonist who would here's Matt again. But she would put a smile like that, which I thought was like goofy but kind of cool. And I took it to such extremes. It's like, oh my gosh, I broke that puppy. Like I would have, like I would be drawing the grin going like beyond the nobody told me not to, so I kept doing it. And if people had told me not to, I'd still keep doing it anyway. But the problem back then was I was drawing with very bad paper and very bad pens. I was using fine line Sharpies, and I was using a comic book paper that just bled all over the place. So if you go back and look at first edition Chez Geek or first edition Munchkin, even when the cards get shrunk down, you can see the bleeds. And I didn't think about it much at the time. In fact, I was at CONvergence, and Bernie Wrightson was a guest. This was in the aughts. And I was on a panel with Bernie Wrightson, and I believe Chris Jones was also on the panel, another artist. And somebody was asking me about what pens they used. And I felt so embarrassed when I just went, Sharpie. He's like one of the greatest illustrators in not just geekdom, but all time. And I'm like, I use a Sharpie. And God bless them, nobody snickered when I said that. So anyway, Chez Geek did really well. And next year, 1999, Steve asked me if he'd come up with this new game called Munchkin, which he and his partner Monica had just started brainstorming all of a sudden as a parody of D&D. And Steve asked me if I wanted to illustrate this. And so this was, again, being like a dyed-in-the-wool gamer from the late 70s who had played Ogre and The Fantasy Trip and all of those micro games. It's like, oh my God, it was just a dream come true. Being the sole illustrator on a game that Steve Jackson himself created. And Munchkin did shockingly well, and it continues to do shockingly well. I actually always thought Chez Geek would be the huge game, but it was Munchkin. So between, like, I also, roughly around this time, I was with Out of the Box games, and we produced Apples to Apples. And so I don't want to list that as my first truly illustrated game because there was one apple and the logo. But I did a lot more in Apples to Apples than that, so I feel okay with those royalty checks. But basically, between Munchkin and Apples to Apples, I ended up with 2 once-in-a-lifetime games to illustrate. So, I'm never, ever, ever going to complain about my problems. And I still love drawing it, but now I use better paper. Let's see if I can find something here. There we go. This is going to be the illustration for the Munchkin role-playing game, which is being published by 9th Level. The same folks who do Cobalt Save My Baby. Anyone?
Yeah.
Hail King Tor?
Oh, Hail King Tor!
And so this is an example of how I now work a little more professionally. These are the pencils for I think CMON Games. This was their Munchkin board game. But so now I take a lot of pride in the art. It's not just hastily scratched out. I went into it like in the late '90s. I was feeling very punk, and it's like it's got to be raw, it's got to be fast. Let's just do this. It's like, yeah, that poor kid. He meant well. He meant very well. But give me time to do something like this any day, and I'm just loving it. In the art show, I've got a 2-page spread up there. And it's from the Dalla Vigor, the latest collection. I brought some along. But this is probably the 2 pages I'm most proud of. It was a convention double spread. And there are so many Easter eggs in this thing. But yeah, if you go down to the art show, you'll see the original there. And this took me weeks, and I had to learn a whole new technique. Like, if you're drawing something like this, you start here and you move on from there. It's like it was a blast. I'm glad I didn't do this electronically. But I'm sorry, I'm rambling. This is what I wanted.
We want to hear you ramble. But okay. Well, I think we'd see. We're about halfway through.
Oh God. I mean, yay.
Well, Like I said, they're here to hear you, not me. But I think it's time to throw it open to some questions from the audience. Just a second, yep. We're gonna have our one trick thing here. And back there, the yellow star. Incidentally, people, if you notice on your chairs, there are these pieces of paper with markings on them. Hold them up when you want to use it. It's that way we don't have to get into personalities.
You were talking a bunch about single panel or collections of single panel stuff. Once the Dork Tower comic started coming out and you were writing, was that a significant shift in workflow to be longer form, or was it actually a relief because you didn't have to parcel it out into bits?
It really was, and I missed the comic, but essentially the first issue of the Dork Tower comic book was just a collection of all of the strips that had run Shadis. The second edition, I didn't have enough material, so I had to start coming up with stories. And I believe it was the second edition where Jilly first shows up, because I was at Dragon Con in Atlanta, and I met James Ernest, the games designer, and he was telling me about this friend of his called Jilly, who was a quirky goth. And it's oh, that's great, I'm gonna do something with a quirky goth. Little did I know, but yeah, I really enjoyed the long format storytelling when I had the time. I was, in fact, the last 60 pages of the Tao of Igor is relatively new. I wrote it all around 2022. It's about 16 pages where I'm just wrapping up all of the stories from the comic books. It's also you can also just get the Tao of Igor and read it for what it is. You don't have to know the previous stories. But I really did enjoy the long format storytelling. And I'm working on a couple of longer format things now. I don't know if I'm just going to publish them as a PDF or a print-on-demand comic. The whole comics industry has changed. Back then, it was very easy to produce an independent comic book, and especially something like Dork Tower, because I had two audiences. I had the comic book store audience, and game stores would pick it up as well. I could send it to the printer. I would get the order in from Diamond, which was essentially a monopoly at the time, or from the couple of, I think there were maybe 4 gaming distributors. And so I'd be able to schedule the print run. I'd print a couple of thousand copies over that, and I would pay for it on credit card, and the check from Diamond would usually come about the same time the credit card bill was due. So it was frankly made for someone like me. That's all changed now. It's all very different. But yeah, I do miss the long format stuff, and I really enjoyed finishing up the Tao of Igor with the old material and pulling it all together.
Orange hashtag.
So obviously there have been a lot of expansions and different flavors of Munchkin. Is there anyone that particularly stands out to you or that you felt was an interesting stretch of your style, or something that you consider to be a favorite rather than the favorite, because that's hard to do?
Okay, that's a great question. Right now, I'm actually super proud of Munchkin 2nd edition. And this is going to be in stores in August, I believe, so it's very soon. I think they're sending it out to the backers now. But basically, before Munchkin 2nd edition, I would say the 3 sets that really stood out for me is things I was genuinely happy with. Usually with my work, I'll go 3 or 4 years being happy with something, then look back at it and see every mistake I made. And sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. But the ones I'm genuinely pleased with, I think, Munchkin Oz I was incredibly happy with how the art turned out for that. And that was a rush job because Andrew Hackard, God bless him, I miss him, passed away a few years ago, told me that the project had been canceled. Then he went off on the Joko cruise. And then about a month later, he discovered that the project hadn't been canceled, and we had 3 weeks to crank it out. But it worked. It really came together nicely. I wouldn't want to do that with every set. Munchkin Shakespeare. I'm a huge Shakespeare geek. And I've got to say, 2 of my favorite cards are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. I loved those cards. They came out beautifully. They were exactly what I wanted them to look like. The game itself is sweet, and there's so many incredibly bad Shakespeare puns. And Shakespeare loved puns. It was, so I think this is really true to the bard. And the geek in me loved it when we got the license for 40K. And so 40K was a huge success, and Sigmar was also, and I was very happy with that art. I was just thrilled to be playing in Games Workshop's sandbox. They were very easy to work with. I was shocked. The approvals process was just a delight. But I'm going to say, after the main game, 4 or 5 expansions and at least 1 set of dungeon cards, I don't feel the need to ever draw a Space Marine again. So for 2nd edition, basically 2nd edition for me is a way to bring the original art up to the standards now, after 25 years of doing Munchkin. So thank goodness, I was very happy with the 40K box. So all I've done is a new cover for that, and the card art will be the same. It will be recolored, so it goes with the new line of 2E stuff. But yeah, when I redid the original art for 2E, we had done a Munchkin set about 10 years ago, called Munchkin Light. And this was going to be like an introductory set to Munchkin. And it did okay. But I redrew everything then, and I put new spins on it. And so when we went back, and one of the reasons Steve never wanted me to redraw the art was he thought it was iconic. And people know this stuff. So when we started the 2E project, I went back and I looked at Munchkin Light, and I was like, oh my God. It's well drawn, but this means nothing. It's like the new takes I have in the cards were not particularly great. They were not particularly better. It was change for the sake of change. And some of it just simply didn't work as I thought at the time. And I'm really glad I had that experience, because that made me just like settle down and go, okay, we're gonna be very respectful for the original Munchkin art, as if it was somebody else's art, which in a sense it was. But I didn't want to change the Duck of Doom. Actually, I did. I changed it to the Duck is now looking at the Munchkin who's picking it up, which it wasn't the first time around. I would love to remove the gazebo card from it. I hate drawing the gazebo. I'm so very, very happy people like at a signing, if I do the duck, I'll be, oh my God, you drew the duck, it's great, the duck. Yeah, my life would be hell if it was a gazebo I'd be drawing for people. But I'm super proud of this, and the whole Steve Jackson Games crew really put out a magnificent product with this. And just like the art department always makes my stuff shine. It was just amazing coloring. The cards look like contemporary gaming cards now. There are coins. Steve really wanted coins in the game. And so what Steve wants, Steve gets. But yeah, I think of all the sets, I'm gonna go with Shakespeare and 2nd edition as the 2, which I really, really like. That's good. I did some good stuff there.
Okay, Blue X. You're up first.
So when you were holding up the Tell of Igor and you were gesturing to the big art piece that you did, do you primarily for those big art pieces start in one corner and go all the way through, or do you do a little bit of like general mapping?
No, I did. I definitely started in one corner all the way through, because the perspective only works if you do it that way, because something can get, everything else is behind the original corner. So we're coming in at that shot from, you're viewing it. yeah, you're sort of looking at it from this angle. So everything started growing out from there. So I would like definitely do, the section there with the card gaming area. I started off with the miniatures gaming area down in the corner. And like I said, there were just a ton of, there were the original wildlife characters there. There's Bob from Bob's Burgers, behind the food station. Like a bunch of my cartoonist friends, I've got their characters in here in the background or something. But yeah, it was working here, like a pencil. I had the general grid down in pencil, but everything did work from this way up and around. So it's sort of ironic. I was actually one of the last things I drew was me in this thing. Top left-hand corner.
Because I was just curious if you typically try to start in a particular spot, especially like being either left-handed or right-handed, and being mindful of like pencil smudging too. Is that something that you tend to keep an eye out for, or not really?
Not really. I mean, I've got a really good set of Japanese pencils that don't really smudge, and I wish I could remember. I think it's Mitsubishi, but it's broken up. Mitsubishi, I believe, is the term. And they're wonderful. And I draw with a micron. And so I'll erase after the inks go down, although sometimes I'll erase the pencils and it'll just be enough of a faint pencil look so I know what's going on. I'll have, a piece of paper under, I mean, I'm one of these people who gets really close to the paper when I'm drawing, and it's terrible for my eyesight. But yeah, it's not left-handed, right-handed thing. I think I always just saw these pages just expanding that way. And this was the first time I tried anything like this, so I had to teach myself all of that. But I think it turned out okay.
Thank you.
And right there, the guy, yeah.
It's us.
Two-part. First, with so many CONvergence tie-ins to it, is there any info on any more Dr. Blake?
Yes. I'm actually, okay, so I love Dr. Blake. I'm hoping to see if I can get some more of Chris's time. If Chris wants to draw Dr. Blake, the door's always open, because Chris Jones is flipping brilliant. And he really, so Dr. Blink, if you don't know, was a comic book that ran for 4 issues, again, self-published back in the aughts. He was the psychologist to the superheroes. And again, one of those books, I think it was issue 3, I'm so proud of that. But it's all out of print now, and I would like to get to crowdfund a reprint. I would love to do new material, but we're also, there could be some stuff happening which I can't really talk too much about, but it's, if it works out, it's going to be terrific. But yeah, one way or another, I'd really love to see more Dr. Blink, and I'd rather have it sooner than later.
Cool. And also, is there any update on the blood feud with Gail Simone, and what do you do to plan to take her down?
Gail Simone, yes, is my nemesis. She's many people's nemesis. So I'm trying to figure out, there's Gene Ha, there are a couple of other people, and so I'm trying to form the League of Anti-Gales. It's the name of our supergroup, and our sole goal is to bring her down to size. No, she's wonderful, and she's helped me enormously. She did, for my charity bike ride, she did a limerick for it, which people who supported it got signed copies of.
Nice.
It was a really terrific little bonus. By the way, if those of you who don't know, I do a charity bike ride every year where I put a duck on my head. Luckily, it's a plushie. It's a duck of doom.
Yeah.
And I think it was Andrew Hackard was the first person to suggest wearing a duck to help get donations going for this ride. And I've been doing this ride, this is going to be my 14th year now. And it's a 60-mile bike ride, and I do it with a duck, and I hate the flipping duck. I hate the flipping duck. And, but the duck gets people to donate because people like to see me suffer. People who are not Gail Simone. And last year, after 13 of these bike rides, so this money goes to farmers to get farm fresh food to low-income and elderly households in and around Dane County. And last year, we passed $250,000 raised. Munchkin and Dork Tower leaders. So yeah, I do this normally takes place in September. I'll do like a charity postcard, a Munchkin postcard, which lets you start at level 3 if you donate $25. And the only way you can actually get original Munchkin art is if you donate, I think it's like $350. So we normally get like about 20 or 30 people doing that. We've had people appearing on Munchkin cards, people appearing in Dork Tower, lots of crazy prizes that make my life insane for a couple of months afterwards. But it's a great cause, and it's all local, and the fact that, you know, geeks, nerds, dorks from around the world come together to help local low-income households is really phenomenal for me.
Hey, John, you should tell them about what's in the GPS auction.
Oh, that's right, yes. So this is something we've done at other conventions, notably GaryCon, WarpCon. So this year, in the auction room, you've got the chance to be your own Munchkin card. And if you were the winning bidder on this, Steve Jackson himself will write the rules to your card. It can be anything you want on your card. It can be you, your friends, your pets, something entirely unrelated. And you will get the original artwork from the card. You'll get the shoddy little sign I made for it, which is now in the auction room. But you'll also get 500 copies of the card, and it will be the second edition back. So you can do with these what you will, give them out to friends, family, people you hate. Just make them jealous. But yeah, that is one of the charity auction items this year.
And the GPX auction room is just next door in Greenway A, just saying. It's also online.
Okay, blue asterisk.
No, I'm gonna have to.
Hold it up so she can see you.
A comment, then a question. First, thank you for putting the Banana Splits theme song in my head as an earworm for the last hour. So.
La la la, la la la, la la la.
Hold the bus.
For the Munchkin cards, do they give you the mechanics and then you draw based on that? Or have there ever been times when you've had something that you've drawn and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing, make something up for it?
Honestly, for Munchkin's 25th, Munchkin's 20th anniversary, I think we were going to do something like that, where I'd draw cards and Steve and Andrew would have to come up with something, and we never got around to that. That would have been a lot of fun. Basically, at this point in time, Steve and I are like an old married couple. I've drawn more than 8,000 Munchkin cards, and so I've got a good idea of what Steve wants, and Steve's got a good idea of what I'm going to deliver. So what I'll attempt to do is I'll just get like one line, which is the title of the card, and then a brief description, like maybe 2 sentences at most, as to what's going to be going on. What's worrying is occasionally there'll be a card that comes in with just the title, and Steve's art direction will be, you know what to do, John. And that's happened more than once, and almost as disturbingly, I have known what to do then. Now, like occasionally, what's kind of funny is like a new person will come up, will start writing Munchkin cards. This happened when Andrew first started, this also happened when Will first started, and it's like they will try to fit so much into a card. Like there was one card I remember Will sending me for 40K, which had like, okay, there are 200 Space Marines battling 300 orcs, but in the foreground there's a Lehman Russ tank. In the mid-ground there are a couple of dreadnoughts, and in the background is the spaceship craft. It's like, it's this big. And it was like, you've seen Games Workshop covers with thousands of things going on. But usually, they learn after a little bit. It's like, yeah, that's not going to work on a tiny Munchkin card. And working with Will is terrific. And again, eventually working with Andrew was amazing. But yes, not every idea necessarily fits on a Munchkin card.
Yellow X, yeah.
I would love to hear more about the history of board games issue. Did you do any research for that? I mean, I'm assuming you did a bunch of research.
Yes, I did a lot of research for that, and I'm sorry that when my kid was born, I just ran out of time, and that's why I stopped publishing. Now, foolishly, I also stopped Dork Tower in the middle of a storyline, which is why the Tao of Igor finally came out. But here's the good news. Yes, there was a lot of research on that. I've got several dozen books on the history of gaming. And a project I'm working on with Ken Hyatt is to actually do a complete cartoon history of gaming. And Ken has been a guest of honor here, and he's just a great friend. And the thing I love about doing a project like this with Ken Hyatt is I don't have to do the research. He's like, he's everybody's phone a friend answer on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He's just, a genius. I mean, he's really preternaturally sharp. He's got a didactic memory, and so I think we're going to probably get seriously started on that later this year. We've got some outlines going. Simon Schuster seems to be interested in this. But yeah, that first, there was like a one-off issue of the comic book, which was the history of gaming, and it essentially just came from Mesopotamia up through the first dice. And it's in the Tao of Igor. And it's all accurate. I actually went to the British Museum. I interviewed one of the curators there, and Irving Frinkle, and there he is. But anyway, just a fantastic character, and yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. That is something I do not want to leave on the back burner for too much longer. Right now, the big thing is I've got 2,500 web strips online, about 2,450 of which have never been collected. And so the next Dork Tower collection is going to start diving into those. And in fact, we got the cover for the new book is down in the art show, the original artwork. It's going to be called The Dork Web. It's going to be a horizontal book instead of a vertical book, just because of the strip layouts. The times in the past I've tried to do the vertical layout with the 4-panel strips just look terrible, and this gives them much more room to breathe. But also, like, there was, after the collected Dork Tower comic books, #1 was published, then the third issue, I think, was called the collected Dork Tower comic strips, which were like the first web strips. And so many people just saw those and say, wait, these are first editions, what's the difference? Comic books, comic strips, comic. So I think having the comic strip done this way will delineate will differentiate the two series more. Now, and I am going to, like the early Dork Towers have been out of print for so long, the collections. Officially, I'm going to be saying that the 30th anniversary is going to run from October this year to October next year, because I started drawing Dork Tower in '96, but the first Shadis publication wasn't until '97. So I'm hoping to do like a recurate the old collections, pull them together into two larger books, and like easier to track down, easier to keep in print.
All right, well, I'm afraid we're gonna have to shove in the control rods because it's 2:53. So, any closing comments?
If anybody's interested, Dork Tower is supported by a Patreon, which has become a terrific community. And are there any Patreon supporters here? Oh, okay, I've got a badge for you. This is the Dork Tower our Army of Dorkness Scout badge, which is when I meet a patron supporter of the wild. Thank you so much, I really appreciate that. But yes, we have a really great community, and they've also become my editors. I know it's a really terrible typo in today's comic, but I'll post them on Patreon first, and I'll get the feedback. And so if somebody corrects something there. Yeah, hopefully I'm going to be in the game room at some point, demonstrating Munchkin 2nd Edition. I don't think there's any set times, but I've got prints in the art show that you can buy. I've got the books you can pick up here, or you can pick it up at the merchandise.
In the merchandise room, and also if you have some, if you don't go through all of them in the merchandise room before then, you have a signing, a meet and greet down in the signing area tomorrow at 3:30, and again on Saturday at 12:30 down in the dealer's room.
Here's something. I brought the first Munchkin 2nd Edition promo cards. Intelligence and When Pigs Fly, which is what Steve has famously said, when will there be a Munchkin 2nd Edition? So if you'd like a Munchkin card or two to see just how spiffy 2nd Edition looks with the new backs, these are all war cards, so you don't see the treasure cards. And I've also got, believe it or not, collectible business cards. The people I do my business cards through, moo.com, let me put 50 different backs on the business card. So if you like a business card, take one, please, and it's got the information, anything like that you need to know. Thank you so much.
You did a great time.